Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're covering easy steps to reducing toll costs. I'm Lisa Arnseth, Content Manager at Help Inc. Due to the number of participants on this webinar, we have muted all lines. If you do have a question, please type it into the questions box located in the webinar panel. You can find this by clicking on the arrow in the upper right of the screen. When the panel opens, just go down to the questions section and expand it by clicking on the arrow. We will answer questions at the end of the webinar. We will be recording today's webinar and will forward all attendees a link within 24 hours. Also, when you log off of the webinar, you will receive a quick survey. Please take a few moments to fill it out. Now I'd like to introduce our presenters. Mark Dowdy is Vice President and Chief Operations Officer at Help Inc. Help is the nonprofit provider of PrePass Way Station bypass and toll payment services. Help's mission is to improve, hold on one second. Okay. Help's mission is to improve highway safety. Okay. Help's mission is to improve highway safety and carrier efficiency. Mark's transportation industry experience includes a decade as president of Moody's Quick Inc. and Quick Product Solutions, providers of nationwide transportation services, as well as warehousing, packaging, and distribution. Drew Anderson brings over 25 years of experience combining regulatory compliance and technology. In his current role, he is responsible for key account management and serves as a subject matter expert for PrePass's INFORM data tools. Andrew Joyce will be joining us during the Q&A portion of this webinar, and he brings over 10 years of toll program management experience. And now I have the pleasure of welcoming Mark Dowdy. Mark?
Good morning, and thank you, Lisa. So to get started this morning, we're going to first kick off with the state of tolling, trends in tolling technology, tolling challenges, solutions, and informed tolling. And then, as Lisa said, we'll jump into some question and answer at the end. So regarding the state of tolling, I think everybody has seen and heard that we have a crumbling infrastructure. And on the first slide at the top, we see a quote from the recent State of the Union. As we rebuild our industries, it's also time to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. In the lower left-hand side, however, we see a recent article from Transport Topics, Trump Infrastructure Plan Promotes Tolling. And then on the right-hand side, battle shaping up over tolls, public-private partnerships from the trucker. So we know that there are different avenues out there that are vying for their piece of the pie when it comes to funding our infrastructure needs. We also know that from a fuel tax increase perspective, that the ATA strongly endorses that approach. You know, one of the main talking points, obviously, is the cost to administer the program for a fuel tax. You're looking at 1 cent per dollar of revenue versus on average 35 cents per dollar on tolling. However, as we look at the infrastructure funding shortfall on this next slide, this came from a Hamilton project associated with the Brookings Institute. And it outlines for all modes of transportation and infrastructure where the needs are, funding from 2013 through 2020. However, the point that is most notable for our industry today is the last bar on the chart: roads, bridges, and transit. And there's an estimated shortage of $800 billion that we are facing. And I think for those of you who are out there running your trucks every day, we know that that exists and we see it every single day. So the question becomes, how do we deal with that? As a nation, the trends in tolling is one of the things that IBTTA, the International Bridge, Turnpike, and Tunnel Association, continues to push for. And there have been significant advancements made in how tolls are collected. So today, with the use of transponders and cameras to identify vehicles, we have seen the migration away from what you are used to with a standard toll booth and a toll booth operator to now open highway tolling. and that's because they're able to do all electronic toll collection with no cash options. According to the government agency, the General Services Administration, they indicate that this approach alleviates traffic congestion, decreases time spent on commuting, increases fuel economy, and then also decreases fuel emissions by reducing time spent in toll booths. So those are very compelling points that the tolling industry presents in terms of their argument for increasing tolling. So that actually puts us to this next slide that we call the perfect storm. Because what we're seeing is we have this shortfall, and we have technologies that are being presented to people to review that says, hey, tolling is a viable solution. Regardless of our industry's beliefs that a fuel tax is the better way to go, there is a strong argument that is being made. And so given the need to raise revenue to address these infrastructure needs and the advantages that are touted by the electronic toll collection systems, many states are considering this as a viable option. And these are states that would have never considered this. And as you can see, these are just grabbing some headlines from recent periodicals. We have Oregon, West Virginia, Connecticut, Wyoming, Utah, among others, who are either considering legislative issues or commissioning studies to determine the impact of expanding tolling in their states or adding tolling for the first time. So that's the perfect storm. And unfortunately, from a motor carrier perspective, it doesn't look like tolls are going away. Quite frankly, just the opposite. It looks like tolls are here and are going to continue to potentially grow in other states.
Okay, thank you, Mark. At this time, we wanted to do a quick poll. We want to find out what your primary tolling challenges are. You should see a question appear on your screen, so go ahead and make a selection and click submit. And in a few seconds, we'll show the results. I'm going to give everyone a few seconds before we continue. Okay. So here we are. Here's the results. Toll violations at 63%, and max tolling charges 25% are the two top choices. Very interesting. I think you'd say so too, Mark, huh?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's go back to Mark, and he can review some of these challenges. Oh,
Thank you, Lisa.
Too fast.
So we're going to go through, and as you can see, the first item that we're addressing happens to be the one that garnered the most attention from those on the call today. Toll violations. The next one we're going to talk about are misclassifications. Then we're going to cover max tolling and plate read tolling, peak tolling, and then the last one is going to be the transponder abuse and fraud. So violations management. Obviously, this is a pain point. We, in PrePass Plus, we see this with our existing customers. It is the greatest increase in tolls that exists out there that are non-toll related in terms of the actual charge incurred. And these are primarily generated by improper transponder reads. So in the little bubble boxes, we've laid out a basic guideline between your initial violation notice, your second notice, third notice, and then legal action. And wanted to point out what the impact is associated with these. And this is the minimum impact. So on your initial toll violation, 30 days to pay. Generally speaking, you're looking at the cost of the tolls plus an additional $2.50. Second violation, the cost of the tolls and the penalty is up to $22.50. And then third violation, cost of the tolls with another $27.50 on top of that. So there's obviously an escalating factor. If it goes to legal action, that's the worst case scenario for everybody. We've seen in one tolling agency that a motor carrier's registration was actually revoked because of their lack of attention to their toll violations. That's a worst case scenario. And the legal action, the motor carrier is responsible for all court fees, administrative fees, et cetera. So it's a very costly scenario. So the advice here, obviously, is to become familiar with what the violations look like and to respond as soon as possible. You know, on the right-hand side, for the PrePass Plus customers that are enrolled today, in 2017, we processed 25,622 toll violations. That's at no cost to those folks. And we had an 87% success rate, meaning that we were able to get the administrative fees and any additional costs removed so that the motor carrier is simply paying the toll incurred. On the 13% that we were unsuccessful on, generally that's because we're receiving the notice too far in the process, meaning that we are not being notified and brought to the table until there's a second or third notice, and then the time runs out in terms of remediating the issue at hand. On this next slide, just wanted to be able to provide a copy of what an actual violations notice looks like. And so this is from Florida DOT. Across the top, big, bold, red, unpaid toll notice. So for your staff, obviously it's important wherever your trucks are running is to gain an awareness of what these notifications are looking like. Hopefully they're not just being viewed and somebody saying, hey, this is a non-issue and tossed in the trash. Time is the essence when it comes to mitigating costs on violations. With that said, wanted to walk through some steps that everyone should be aware of. And we've laid these out in a couple different sections in the presentation today because a copy of this presentation will be made available and hopefully becomes a good resource for you and your teams. First and foremost, toll violations can be disputed and many of the administrative fees can be removed. Again, contact the agency and send in timely payment. Number two, you're basically going to see on the bottom or the back of each notice that there are instructions for disputing the toll in the event that you think it's inaccurate. So having awareness of what toll agencies you're dealing with and where their notifications come in and having somebody respond very quickly. This one is a bit of a stickler. Each violation must be disputed individually through the agency. Unfortunately, you know, there are over 49 different tolling agencies in the US as of February 2018. So being aware of which agency that you're dealing with and processing in a timely manner, very crucial. The next one, this is an unfortunate reality. Violation disputes can sometimes take several months to get resolved. We wish there was a way to expedite it. Persistence is the key, staying on top of the issues. And then most agencies have very specific information and formatting required to dispute a toll, and they will provide this information if contacted. On this page, as well as the next page, you will see that we have outlined, and again, this will be available to all of the attendees, the tolling agencies that we deal with through PrePass Plus and the web addresses associated with each of those. Hopefully that will make it easier for you and your team to be able to address and research these issues on your own. The next one that we are addressing is vehicle misclassification. And this is pretty straightforward. The key is, first and foremost, being aware of how the toll agencies look at the vehicles. And by and large, most of them are looking at the axle count. And this is an example from the EasyPass network. And it shows the tractor-trailer combination, and there's several classes. EasyPass happens to have an additional unique criterion that they're also looking at the trailer length. What's important is to make sure that if you are using transponders, that you have your trucks classified appropriately. If you take a transponder from one truck and move it to another, take it from one of your over-the-road configurations to a city cab, you're going to want to make sure that somebody goes in and updates that portal to reflect the reduced number of axles. On average, we see that when these misclassifications occur, generally somewhere between $10 to $15 per transaction is the cost difference. So it takes diligence, takes staying on top of this, but again, very important to making sure that you're not paying a penny more than what is owed for the tolls incurred. So the next one we're going to take a look at is max tolls and plate read tolls. And really on this, the chart that you're viewing for plate read tolls, I'll speak to that first. As you can see, if we look in the bottom of the chart under the 12 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. for Easy Pass for heavy vehicles, if you're using a transponder, you're looking at a $3.75 toll. If they're using a camera to bill this transaction, and so by that they call it a plate read, and it's a registered plate that's in their system, there's an increase in the toll, and it goes up to $5. And then if they're using a camera for a plate read and the vehicle is not registered in the system, you can see it increases to $6.25. So really the important message here is the utilization of the tolling transponders still continues to be the best way to get the lowest price for all of your tolling activities. The next thing that we're going to touch base on is max tolls. And a couple things that we really need to focus on here. First and foremost, why does a max toll occur? Generally, that means that if a transponder is being used at either at the point of entry onto the toll road or at the point of exit, there was a failure to read the transponder. And so therefore, there's no correlating data. I've listed a couple of examples of what the max tolls are, and I'm sure for those of you on this webinar, you have incurred these yourselves and are very familiar with them. Florida, $64. Pennsylvania, over $110. New York, in excess of $114. So obviously these are very painful when they hit your account. However, max tolls can be disputed as long as you know the proper point of entry or exit, and that's the key piece of data that is needed to be able to dispute these charges. You must look at your bills in detail because they are not easy to find. And if you don't identify them, they're going to just be billed in a normal fashion. Similar to violations, as I previously discussed, you can dispute these. However, it takes several months to receive a credit on your statement. And I wish I had better news, but some of the agencies just apply a credit and there's no additional detail. And we know this, and it makes it very difficult for keeping track of which disputes you have actually been reimbursed for. So the max tolls, again, very painful, but diligence is the key to managing those. On this next slide, we simply wanted to provide an example of an invoice. And as you'll see on the top transaction, NISTA is New York State. You'll see the entry plaza is $46, the exit plaza is $46, but the crucial component is a $73.38 charge. If you go a little further down in the bill, you'll see the other highlighted ones for $181.70 and another, or excuse me, $81.70, and another one for $75.38. So when reviewing your bill, those things stick out like a sore thumb. Again, having somebody on your team who is reviewing this, identifying them, and either pursuing it on your own and filling out the appropriate paperwork to dispute the max toll, or if you're a PrePass Plus customer, contacting our support team so that they can do it on your behalf. Timing is very crucial, but the key is that these can be disputed and can be managed. A couple other key points to look at. As I said, there's a larger than average toll amount. Many times the actual transaction date is delayed. So if you're looking at your bills of lading or any other shipping documents and you say there's no way that truck was there, those are some key things in terms of identifying that max toll. And one other, the description is often the plate number and not the transponder number. So That's one other thing to have your teams looking for when they're reviewing your toll bills to manage this risk. Number 4 here is peak tolling. And although this has probably not had the dramatic effect on our industry that some of the other categories are, we still nonetheless wanted to point out what's going on. So many agencies now are having dynamic tolling, meaning that based on the level of congestion, the pricing increases. This is an actual screenshot. This particular toll road is around the Beltway in Washington, D.C., and this is a passenger vehicle toll. This isn't even a commercial vehicle, $44. So you can look at online with the tolling agencies. They do generally publish when their peak times are. This is information that if your dispatch is aware, your drivers are aware what roads to avoid, and to make sure that your vehicles are not put in a situation where they could be incurring dynamic tolling. And at that point in time, the more congested it becomes, the higher the cost escalates. So just another thing to be aware of to mitigate any additional costs on your tolling bills. Next, talking a little bit about transponder abuse and fraud. And I know this one came in relatively low in terms of the previous toll. Just wanted to point out some trends that are out there and things to be aware of. Just as with technology and in every single space that we see, every company is trying to make their product have more utility, and transponders are no different. Just like you have with cell phones, and that you can pay with your cell phone for transactions. Transponders are being used, as you can see on the left. This particular Wendy's is in part of a EasyPass toll facility, and so somebody could actually bill their food to their transponder. LaGuardia Airport, again, paying with EasyPass. Now, we would look at this and say, well, it would stick out like a sore thumb having a truck roll through here. However, if somebody is taking a transponder out of their truck and using it in their passenger vehicle, it's quite possible these are the types of fraudulent charges that could appear on your bills. So how do you spot them? A couple of quick things to be aware of. In the EasyPass network, so if you see the charge class of SVC, that's Sam Victor Charlie, that generally means a service charge. That's not a direct toll. Those are things that you would want to look into. And also, if there was food purchased in the EasyPass network, it would come through as an EasyPass Plus charge. So just a couple of tidbits on things that your team may want to look for if they see some anomalies appearing on your tolling bills. The next thing we want to talk about is along the same lines in terms of the abuse and fraud. And these are just some things that we want to create awareness on. Keeping in mind that these transponders are like a stored valued credit card. And when you have inventory on site at your terminals to be able to swap them out, obviously you don't want to disrupt the activity of your operation. Keep in mind that you want to make sure they're secured. You want to make sure that you're monitoring your bills so that no unassigned transponders are showing up and generating costs, because we have had instances where transponders have been stolen. The worst case scenario is a carrier, there was an excess of $5,000 run up on the transponder before they actually identified that it was being utilized. Now, obviously, this was a very large carrier, but nonetheless, the cost can be pretty painful to absorb. We've had situations where at truck stops, folks are taking the transponders out of the truck and selling them. We've also seen situations from an abuse perspective where motor carrier could be hauling a load for somebody else. And so you need to be aware of that. And if you'll see things that are out of route. So on this next slide, just wanted to list some best practices. Number one, maintain a low inventory of unassigned devices. As I said, transponders should be treated like an active credit card. Number two, monitor invoices for potential tolls on unauthorized routes. Therefore, that would help you to identify if a truck is being used in a way that you've not authorized, or if they're carrying a load for somebody else. And next, look for off-hour toll charges. This may indicate unauthorized use. And then lastly, immediately report all lost, stolen transponders. You want to cut that line of credit off as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Mark. Now I'd like to introduce Drew Anderson. He's going to use Inform Tolling to show you how you can use this data to optimize your tolling programs. And after a short demo, we will have time for questions. So just give us one moment to switch over to Drew, and we will go from there.
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome everybody, and thanks for taking the time to join us today. Hopefully you're going to get some good takeaways from your time spent. And I guess just as a quick introduction to Inform Tolling, Mark had mentioned that toll agencies are making very good use of technology to enable them to expand tolling operations. And I guess you could look at Inform Tolling as a way that we're using technology to help minimize those costs and improve operational efficiencies. So that really is sort of the genesis behind this solution. So just real quickly, Inform from a very high level view, the sort of three guiding principles when we're looking at providing technology solution around tolling and other areas. One is to improve operational efficiencies. Two, we want to make it easy to access actionable data. As Mark went through, there is a tremendous opportunity, let's call it, for optimizing savings on tolling. And in order to do that, you're going to need access to data. And third, you're going to need to be able to get that data into the hands of the folks who can take action. So those are sort of the three touchstones. We've developed Inform Tolling as a technology solution, and when you log in to the system as a PrePass Plus customer, you are going to land on what we call the company snapshot page. And this again is just a dashboard, a high-level view of what's going on today with your tolling activity. And you'll see the screen is broken into three basic sections here: just a current activity, broken down into invoiced and last uninvoiced and last invoiced toll amounts. Over on the right-hand side, we'll see alerts, and we're going to talk about alerts in more detail. So I'll just skip over that for now because we're going to come back to that. And then lastly, the transaction timeline will allow us to see over whatever period of time that we select, and I happen to have a month's worth of time here on the screen. I can start to look for trends and patterns, right? And this is where the data begins to reveal itself as to where I might look for opportunities to communicate to drivers, terminal managers, whoever may be the stakeholder, something amiss appears to be going on. So I can select, in this case, all of my agencies, or I can, let's just take Pennsylvania Turnpike, and now my view will show Pennsylvania Turnpike, and I can even begin to overlay other toll agencies and begin to see trends and patterns of where anomalies may be lying. So this is the 5,000-foot view of your toll activity. And from here, we're going to go in and start to identify solutions to those specific challenges that Mark went through, and there are many. So let's go over to the Data Insights tab, and this is where we begin to drill down and see a much more granular view of my data. We've spent a lot of time focusing on data visualization, so you don't have to find that needle in the haystack. The system really guides you to where those answers to those challenges lie. So in the Data Insights, you can select whatever date range you would like. We simply default it to 3 months. There's no magic there. I can select by exit date, posting date, or invoice date. I can select any agency. I can look at plate read versus transponder read. I can sort by toll amount. So if we looked at max tolling, if I wanted just to look at a data visualization based upon toll amounts, I can do that. My invoice status, and I can even select an individual transponder ID. For the purposes of this little quick demonstration, let's just go ahead and pick Pennsylvania, just to be consistent here. So let's go down and look at Pennsylvania. I run my query, and now my data is sorted only by Pennsylvania. And as I zoom in, I begin to see by freight lanes what's going on tolling. I can actually go in and look at any pinpoint, and these are toll plazas, all right, and it will show me for this 3-month time frame what the toll amounts are for that particular plaza, all right. I can do a quick view of transactions here, or I think more interesting, if I go back to my details here, so I've gone from my map, and if I go over to my details here, now I'm going to see for that 3-month time frame for Pennsylvania all of my toll transactions. And from my perspective, this is where the magic happens, because I can quickly start to get answers to these questions and the challenges that Mark was speaking to earlier. So let's take a max toll example for on my toll charges over here on the far right. This lists all of the toll amounts for this date range. And I can do a couple of things here. I can sort on this column by ascending or descending order. And immediately all of these toll charges are going to be sorted by the amount. And you can see that I have some significant toll charges. And these are probably going to be max toll candidates. Now, as Mark alluded to, it requires a little bit of investigation on these on max tolls. Just because it is a significant amount doesn't necessarily mean that it by definition is a max toll. It likely is, but we need to do a little more investigation, and this gives you the starting point by agency, in this case Pennsylvania, for these large toll amounts. So I don't have to sort through an invoice and try to highlight each of these line items. The data is presented very cleanly and very quickly simply by sorting on that particular column. All right, another one we want to look at is plate reads. All right, so if I look at my read type here and I do the same function, so let's sort by ascending or descending, and now I can see that for this agency, for this particular time frame, I have 5 plate read tolls. All right, and I've got a very large one in here at $174. So that is going to be something that I want to take a very close look at. All right, if I want to use this data and sort by classification, Mark mentioned vehicle classification as another one. Well, what can I do to identify that information? I can actually sort this data by class by simply taking my class column, dragging it over here to the header bar, and now you will see immediately that all of my data, my toll transactions for this time frame for Pennsylvania, is sorted by class. So I can do a couple of things here. I can just simply go through visually and see where misclassifications might jump out, but I can also export this information if I want to compare this to another system that I have operating internally. It makes it very easy to do that. I could also sort by another column. So let's take my class and truck ID. So I first sort by class, and then I sort by truck ID. Now I can begin to get very granular. Here's all my class 9s. Here's the truck ID. These are your internal truck numbers that you provide. You could also include a PrePass ID if you wanted to, or an EasyPass ID plate. It's entirely up to you. However you manage the data, Inform will allow you to sort and start to find those needles in the haystack, if you will, very, very quickly. The other significant challenge, or one of the significant challenges that Mark talked about that was on the survey, was peak tolling. So if I wanted to just clear that filter, and let's say I wanted to look at my truck ID column, let's pull that into my sort filter, and then let's look at entry dates. All right, or let's look at exit times, because that's a peak tolling issue, right? So now I can quickly identify what trucks are operating at odd hours that might be incurring peak tolls. Again, the idea is from the snapshot page, I've got my 5,000-foot view. It quickly identifies areas that may be an opportunity to reduce some expenses, maybe get some data into the hands of those people who need to make some changes. And again, Inform is designed to make it very easy to do all of those things. A couple of other things real quickly that I want to hit on that are of high importance. And first and foremost is violations. All right, so we spent a fair amount of time on violations in Mark's side of the presentation, and Inform has a very powerful set of tools to help manage those violations. So we talked about the fact that toll agencies, there are 49 plus some odd toll agencies, each has their own set of criteria for submitting violations. So through Inform, you can actually submit a violation online. So if I just click on submit new violation, my form comes up, and this is really cool. So I can select an agency, and you can see all of those 49 plus agencies are listed here. And depending upon which agency I select, let's just take Atlantic City, for example, my form is dynamically modified to force you to fill out the proper fields, right? We don't let you make a mistake. Maybe that's a better way to say it. So we know what the agency's requirements are. We provide you all of the fields, and just like a normal form online, if it has a little red asterisk to it, that means it is required. So we want to make sure that you fill that out completely, so you don't have go through this effort and then find out too late, because it is a timing issue. Mark's spent a lot of time focusing on that. Timeliness is critical on challenging any violation. So we want to make sure you get it done the first time. And down here at the bottom, you can even upload a image of the actual violation, attach it to this, and then submit it to us for resolution. And if I go back now, I can see a couple of different reports here. So these are the violations that are in process. And we talked about that earlier. How do I know what's going on? I mean, sometimes it takes 2 days, sometimes it takes 2 months. Who knows with each agency how long it's going to take to resolve these things. We provide you over here on the far right the status of each one of these items, so you know whether or not it is in process, being handled, or if I need more follow-up. In addition, if I select my completed tab over here on the right, you can see these are all of the successfully completed and paid. This is a duplicate, rejected, whatever the status is, this is going to provide you so you don't have to keep track of this on your own. So this is going to provide significant time savings, a lot of efficiencies, and again, I can communicate this to my internal and or external stakeholders as the case may be. And then lastly, I want to touch on the alerts. So we talked a little bit about misuse / fraud, whatever you want to call it. And this is where the alerts functionality is extremely useful and quite powerful for our customers. So when I'm looking at alerts, and if you remember on the toll snapshot, up on the upper right-hand widget there, as we call it, there was a running list of alerts, and those come in literally live. So if you had nothing better to do during the day, you could sit here and watch Inform and see if any alerts come in. But these are real time as they happen. So we want to make sure and get the information in your hands so you can take corrective action as soon as reasonably possible. And so we've got a variety of alerts, and on the default page here on alerts, I see my trend line, and I see in non-toll charges in blue and non-toll charges in yellow. And Mark alluded to how those are classified. We actually use technology to pull those out of the invoice. We can identify if you are incurring any non-toll charges for food or non-toll charges for parking, and those are the red and the blue lines. Any unassigned devices are the green lines, and high volume plate reads in red. And so I'll look at real quickly one example of high volume. Actually, let's pick an unassigned device, because this is really important. Toll toll transponders are credit cards basically open, and so we want to keep track of those. We want to keep our inventory of these devices at a minimum, and so we want to let you know when any charges are being incurred by an unassigned device. That's a red flag, right? So we want to bring that to your attention immediately. So just by clicking on the alert down here, it brings up a detail. So I see on such and such a date that this device ID had a charge incurred to it. Now, it could be that it was simply not properly assigned to the truck, all right? So we're not saying that fraud is occurring for sure, but we're bringing this to your attention that, you know, the transaction has occurred, and if it's not properly assigned to the truck, we need to go back and do that. And I can actually go in and see any related transactions, if there were any on this. Again, my summary, and this gives you a very quick and easy way to identify what potential fraud and or misuse is occurring as a result of these transponders being out there. So that's a real quick view going from the snapshot, looking at how we address issues such as max tolling, plate read tolls. You know, plate read tolls could be something simple as, you know, we need to readjust a transponder in the windshield. Misclassifications can be a significant source of cost. So as the industry and the country is moving towards more tolling solutions, we're trying to provide a counterbalance to that and help you minimize these costs wherever possible. So with that, I'm going to have Lisa take back the screen, and real quickly, just in summary, what we've got here is a wrap up of several of the things that Mark said, and tying it into the informed tolling. There's a lot of benefits of looking at a service provider as opposed to trying to do all of this and manage all of these toll agencies on your own. First and foremost is one multi-protocol transponder. Managing a myriad of devices across a myriad of agencies is a hassle, I think would be a very polite way to put it. Discounted toll pricing. With a provider, you can leverage the volume discounts that are afforded to them and how they structure these accounts with the various agencies. So discounts that you may not be receiving or would not be receiving actually. Without those, you're going to be paying a significant higher amount. Having everything consolidated on one central bill as opposed to bringing in multiple bills from various agencies. Third-party providers will manage the violation and toll disputes on your behalf. They should have those relationships in place, and that's going to take a significant burden off of your staff, reducing your administrative fees, improving loss prevention, and lastly, my bias is access to actionable data. If you don't have access to data that you can take action on, that is easy to get at, easy to visualize and communicate, then you are going to have challenges. So that's what we try to provide in Inform.
Thank you, Drew and Mark, and thank you for your time today. Again, we have recorded this presentation, and you will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording. Also, please don't forget to complete the short survey you will see shortly. We want to thank you today for joining us, and we hope you have a great day.